Welcome. My name is Melissa Kittleson, and this is my EDU 709 project. The rationale behind this project was to develop something that would not only expand my use of innovative technology in the classroom, but to also address an area of curriculum that in my district is consistently pushed to the back burner, and that is social studies. We are highly lacking in that area, and it is becoming evident in some of our scores. So I wanted to take an initiative to try to develop something that I knew needed work at my grade level and also in my district. I chose Glogster and Windows Movie Maker as the two technology innovations that I would like to try to incorporate more into my learning environment. And the reason behind choosing Glogster, especially for this project, which has to do with creating meaning of the past using American holidays, and I wanted to use Glogster as more of a research tool rather than a presentation mechanism. So Glogster allowed me to introduce researching in a safe and secure environment. It is something that I created. The content was put together by me. I know exactly what the students will be looking at. By allowing the kids to be researching, it engages them and empowers them to feel like they can gather and navigate independently. Even though I know that this was already created and they're really not going out into the World Wide Web. But it's a nice way to introduce, 5, 6, and 7-year-olds to what research is and how to begin collecting it. As far as Windows Movie Maker, this tool was mainly selected as an engagement for the learners. I knew that they would be very excited to make a movie of the material they had collected, but I also saw how easily it could lend itself to cross-curricular integration and higher order thinking skills. If I was ever to leave the first grade, I could easily use this tool in other grade levels or other content areas, and I think it gives the students a greater opportunity to become connected with the material. They find more meaning in it when they have to break it apart and manipulate it and find a way to present it to an audience and they want to make sure that the audience has meaning to the lesson, and that they connect with it and that they share with it and that they want to be proud of what they created and know that other people enjoyed it. So I think that Windows Movie Maker allowed that kind of extra connection to the material, something that will hopefully last much longer than just a paper pencil activity. The first lesson in this project is using Glogster as a research tool, and the student objective for this part of the project is to be able to research a topic. It's an introduction to researching, just letting them kind of get their feet wet with what research means. The technology and resources required for this activity are fairly minimal. The students will need a computer with internet access. Headphones are a very nice added perk, but not completely necessary. I would also suggest one-to-one technology if this is possible, maybe checking out lab time or using laptops, but the project is flexible in that you can address it as a one-to-one or individual activity, or if the technology is not available, you can always do whole group or small group. Time and support is the largest resource, especially teacher prep time. I suggest making a research guide to help guide the students while they're going through the glog, and also the prep time of creating the glog itself. When it comes to student and teacher knowledge, the students really just need a basic understanding of the workings of the equipment, how to use the mouse, how to use the keyboard, how to turn the volume up on their headphones, things like that. They will also need some reading ability. And this, too, is a flexible part of the lesson in that you can kind of differentiate your instruction here. If you have above grade level learners and you want to challenge them, you might create a glog that is a little more wordy, maybe requires them to sift through a little bit more information, whereas if you have a below grade level learner, you might choose to incorporate more videos or just straightforward facts and photos rather than working to their working above their reading ability. So there's a chance for some differentiation there. When it comes to teacher knowledge, basic researching skills and kind of understanding the workings of Glogster are important perks, I guess. You can still complete this activity without knowing much about research or how Glogster works. I was able to create my holiday glog only having used Glogster maybe 2 other times. So the learning curve is really quite quick and it doesn't take too long, but it might save you a little frustration in the long run if you kind of have those basic skills and that basic familiarity. When it comes to advantages and disadvantages of this particular lesson, the biggest thing and the best thing about using Glogster as a research tool is that students age 5, 6, and 7 in the first grade can be exposed to researching in a safe and secure environment. I was the one that created the glog. I know exactly what they'll be looking at. I know the material that they'll be going through. But at the same time, I think they feel some independence and some empowerment in being able to navigate that on their own. As far as disadvantages go, I would say planning and prep time could be seen as a disadvantage in that getting the project started and kind of getting it off its feet is kind of takes a lot of work. But on the other hand, once it's done, and it will take very little to keep it up and running for years to come. The information and resources that you collect about a Labor Day holiday will likely still be valid 2 or 3 years down the road should you choose to do this assignment again. So kind of a disadvantage, but also an advantage in the long run. Flexible. I would choose to introduce the activity and its objective and expectations to the students first thing. That way they know going into the project what it is that I will be looking for them to do. I will probably be using a combination of whole group, small group, and individual instruction with this activity. I will introduce the procedure whole group. I will introduce how to navigate the glog whole group, and then I will schedule time in the lab for individual or small group exploration of the glog. I suggest in my procedures that you visit the computer lab twice. The first time would be just a time for the students to visit the glog that they're assigned, click on the different links, watch the videos, listen to any music or look at any pictures, read any passages, just kind of explore the glog for fun. I would then schedule a second time for the students to go visit the lab, and at this time have them look at the research guide. And the research guide would just be something that the teacher creates. I happen to be using one that deals with the how, when, where, why of a text. We use that type of organizer a lot in our regular reading program when we're trying to dissect fiction and nonfiction stories. So for my kids, that would be something that they are familiar with. If you have a different type of organizer or kind of a questioning method that you like to use to draw out ideas, then maybe you want to adjust your research guide accordingly. I will attach the research guide and the sample glog to the end of this video as they are not able to be embedded inside of it. Anyway, those 2 things will be available for you at the end of the video. I would also suggest that before handing out your research guide, you introduce it whole group and teach the kids how they're supposed to be using it. Sometimes we tend to assume that they will just understand what they're supposed to do, and although a lot of them can, many of them will flounder and struggle and time will be wasted. So as far as procedures go, this is flexible enough to be adjusted to whatever sort of technology is available to you, whatever sort of time is available to you. If, holidays is not something you need to spend a lot of time on, or you don't feel like you need to spend a lot of time on, maybe you want to do this as a whole group activity. You would probably progress through the project much quicker. If you're looking to gauge individual progress, working through activities independently. For myself, this would be a bit of an assessment tool, seeing how well the kids can work independently at the end of the year. This might be a fun activity that is not completely unmanageable for them. And Windows Movie Maker is the second part of this project, and I am using Movie Maker as the presentation tool. The technology and resources needed for the students include some type of storyboard or graphic organizer. Depending on how familiar your students are with those might be what you choose. If they're familiar with storyboards, you would probably go that route. If they're more familiar with a graphic organizer, that might be a better choice. Students will also need arts and crafts supplies near the end of the project. As a teacher, you will need a computer with the Movie Maker software downloaded, which is very easy. You can just search the web for it. It doesn't take very long to download. And you will need some sort of recording device, camcorder, tablet. I've been using my phone, which seems to work pretty good. As far as student and teacher knowledge goes, the students will need to have a knowledge of the holiday they are studying, and of course this should have been acquired through the previous Glogster activity. They will need some teamworking skills. If you haven't ever if you haven't ever had your students work in groups, you probably won't want to do this activity right off the bat because they definitely need to have some teamworking skills already established. And they will also need to have a basic knowledge of story structure, how a story progresses through time, something that makes sense. As a teacher, you need to be familiar with Movie Maker. I will be totally honest in saying that I was not too familiar with Movie Maker when I started this project, and I have spent a lot of it being very, very frustrated. So just a heads up there, you might want to just play with some things at home. Making movies with pictures and things like that would probably be a good idea. As far as pedagogy and skill of presenting the storytelling method, that's really important because your presentation and your instruction will guide them on how they need to create their own story, what you're actually looking for them to do. If you have made a movie before, especially geared toward this, maybe as a sample, it would probably be a good choice to show them. I have not made a sample yet, but I am working with a couple of my students as an extra kind of project, and we're working to create one now that I will hopefully be able to use as a sample. Just for first graders, it helps them to see what the finished product is supposed to look like. It gives them some sort of jumping off point because sometimes they tend to just look at you as if they're completely lost. So presenting those storytelling skills and how to go about telling a story is really going to be important for them to feel success. The advantages and disadvantages of this Windows Movie Maker as a presentation tool: first and foremost, it is a great motivator. Students are absolutely ecstatic to be making their own movie, and they can't wait to get started. The other thing I noticed with Movie Maker is how the technology can easily transition across grade level and content area. I could take this activity and tweak it, and instead of doing a glog about a holiday, they could do I could have a glog about a certain type of animal or a certain type of habitat. So this project could easily be manipulated to fit whatever it was that you needed. As far as disadvantages go, there's probably going to be a lot of adult assistance needed in the story creation part of this project. Although the students are going to come up with a lot of ideas, they're not necessarily going to know how to organize them and implement them unless you have done a lot of story creation in the past, in which case the students would probably be able to hit the ground running. And the last thing is that, again, Movie Maker can be difficult to use. If you don't have experience with it, it can be very, very frustrating at times, as I have kind of found out the hard way. So just keep that in mind as far as disadvantages go. The last part of this Windows Movie Maker present as a presentation tool that I need to introduce to you is the procedure aspect of this lesson. You will need to divide the students into groups. Again, this is a good time for differentiating instruction. If you're looking to have maybe lower level learners work together, or combining the two depending on how you decided to do the Glogster lesson. If you have all of your glogs the same, at the same ability level, you might choose to adjust the ability levels as far as your student grouping. So the students will need to be divided into groups, and then the activity will need to be introduced and the expectations explained. I would also highly recommend sharing a finished product. Again, if you have one available, I mentioned this earlier, for first graders it gives them a goal to look toward. It gives them a jumping off point, a place to start. It kind of gets the ball rolling as far as their ideas go. So if a finished product is available, it would be nice to share. If it isn't, then you'll just go with it. But definitely make sure that you explain the expectations and the outcome that you expect from them. Once the kids are into groups, they will need to discuss the research that they have collected from the previous Glogster activity. Each person should be coming to the group with their own research guide, and then they will need to discuss as a group what they gathered, the type of information they gathered, and they'll need to complete just one research guide. That research guide will be what they work from as far as how they choose to present their material and what they choose to present. As far as presenting goes, there are many different avenues that they may take as far as being creative in their presentation. They may choose to just report it normally, like you would in front of a whole group, or they may want to do a movie and pretend to be actors. They may want to do a news broadcast, or maybe pretend they're going back in a time machine and dress up as those people would have when they first celebrated that holiday. But just brainstorming some ideas of how they might like to present the research that they have gathered. When the students start planning their presentations, it would probably be a good time at that point to pull the whole group back together and introduce how to use the storyboard or organizer that you have chosen for them. This will kind of be a time where they're going to be creating a rough draft. It's that phase of writing where there's going to be lots of mistakes and lots of tweaking and changing, and just explaining to them that just like writing any story and going through the writing process, you need to do the same thing when you're creating a movie or a video. You need to go through those same types of processes, the rough draft, the peer editing, all of those things. And you'll also need to schedule time that they will meet with an adult or with the teacher to help finalize some of those last-minute details. The students will also need to create props and practice their presenting. I would suggest they practice their presenting maybe 3 or 4 times. Although this seems really time-consuming, again, it's hitting those objectives repeatedly, and they're not only working on their oral language skills, but their writing skills, their team working skills, their organizational skills. All of those things are coming into practice. So although it's taking a little bit more out of your class time, you're also hitting many objectives. So it's a worthwhile exchange. And the last thing is to make sure that you have planned out a scheduled time for the students to shoot their video. They can pick a date. That's kind of a deadline that they need to work towards, and putting it in a separate space outside of the classroom where not everybody can see would probably be the best use of your time, only because students tend to get distracted when their peers are watching them. Not to mention the noise level that might be going on. If they're trying to create a movie, you're going to want the rest of the area to be as quiet as possible. So scheduling a time to do those video shoots would be important. I hope you enjoyed my presentation of the project, and I hope that you can find a way to use Movie Maker and Glogster in your own classrooms. And if there is anything else I can do as far as this project to get you any more details, please feel free to email me or let me know what I can do to help you. Thank you.